In just 43 seconds, $47 million in affordable housing funds vanished from the federal database. Zohran Mamdani didn't wait for the moderator's permission or adjust his tie. He pulled out a manila folder, marked District 36, and began reading transaction codes. Cameras zoomed in, the MSNBC panel froze. What did Zohran Mamdani expose about housing corruption that made the network cut to commercial break in the middle of a live debate? The date was October 15, 2024. Studio 8H, in Rockefeller Center, buzzed with pre-debate energy as makeup artists applied final touches and producers whispered last-minute instructions through earpieces. Tonight's housing crisis special was supposed to be routine political theater. Progressive Democrat Zohran Mamdani versus moderate Democrat Jared Moskowitz, discussing federal housing policy. The network expected polite disagreement over tax credits and zoning reform. They got something else entirely. Mamdani walked in like a tenant organizer who had memorized every broken promise. His navy suit was pressed, but his expression carried the weight of Queen's constituents sleeping in cars. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes scanned documents that most politicians never bothered to read. Moskowitz entered like a congressman, carved in ambition. The Florida representative's smile was practiced. His American flag pin, positioned perfectly. At 42, he had mastered the art of sounding progressive, while protecting establishment interests. His staff whispered talking points about pragmatic solutions and bipartisan compromise. At exactly 7:47 p.m., the red lights blinked on. "Good evening, I'm Chris Hayes," the host began, "and tonight we're examining America's housing crisis with two Democratic voices who see very different paths forward." Hayes turned to Moskowitz first. "Congressman, your Housing Stability Act passed committee last month. Critics say it doesn't go far enough." Moskowitz leaned forward with practiced ease. "Chris, we're making real progress. The bill provides $2.3 billion in tax incentives for developers who include affordable units. It's the largest housing investment since when?" Mamdani interrupted, his voice cutting through Moskowitz's rehearsed cadence. "Since your donors started getting nervous about rent control." The studio's temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. Hayes glanced at his producer, who shrugged. "This wasn't in the pre-interview." Moskowitz's smile tightened. "Representative Mamdani, if you'd let me finish."
"I'd rather you finish explaining this."
Mamdani opened his folder and extracted a single sheet of paper. "Your bill allocates $47 million specifically for housing innovation partnerships in South Florida. Want to guess who runs the biggest housing innovation firm in your district?" The cameras caught Moskowitz's jaw clench. His aide, sitting just off camera, frantically typed on her phone. That's public information, Zohran. These are legitimate businesses creating jobs. Creating profits," Mamdani said, his voice steady as surgical steel. "MK Development Group received $12.7 million in innovation grants last year. Their CEO is Marcus Klein. Ring any bells?" Moskowitz shifted in his chair. "I don't see how." "Marcus Klein donated $27,400 to your campaign last cycle. His wife donated another $27,400. His business partner donated $27,400. Shall I continue, or do you want to explain how that's not coordinated?" The silence lasted 4 seconds. Hayes started to speak, but Mamdani wasn't finished. "Here's what's interesting about MK Development. According to their tax filings, they've built exactly 0 affordable housing units, despite receiving $12.7 million in taxpayer funds designated for affordable housing." Moskowitz's face flushed red. "That's a gross mischaracterization." "Is it?" Mamdani pulled out another document. "This is MK Development's quarterly report. Quote, market-rate luxury condominiums represent our core competency and primary revenue stream." End quote. Not a single mention of affordable housing. The congressman from Florida opened his mouth, then closed it. His aide was now standing behind the cameras, making slashing motions across her throat. "The Innovation Partnerships Clause in your bill," Mamdani continued, "removes income requirements for developers, meaning they can take federal affordable housing money and build luxury condos. Legal money laundering with a housing bill wrapper." That's completely false. Moskowitz started. Section 47 bodies of your bill, Mamdani said, flipping to a tabbed page. Shall I read it aloud? Innovation partnerships may include market rate developments that demonstrate housing solutions scalability. In plain English, luxury condos count as affordable housing if you use the right buzzwords. Hayes finally found his voice. Congressman Moskowitz, how do you respond to this? Is a hit job, Moskowitz snapped, his composure cracking. Representative Mamdani is cherry-picking data to smear legitimate policy work. These partnerships create jobs. They increase housing stock. They increase your donors' bank accounts, Mamdani said. Here's what really happened. Klein's firm approached your office in March 2023. 1 month later, you introduced preliminary language about innovation partnerships. 2 weeks after that, Klein hosted a fundraiser at his Coral Gables mansion. The minimum donation was $1,000 per plate. You raised $78,000 that night. The color drained from Moskowitz's face. How do public records? Your campaign filed the report. Klein filed his tax deduction. MK Development listed the event as a community outreach expense. It's all legal, Jared. It's just corrupt. Moskowitz slammed his hand on the desk. You're out of line. I've dedicated my career to helping working families. Have you? Mamdani's voice remained calm, which made it more devastating. Let's talk about working families. Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez, single mother, 2 kids, lives in my district. She makes $34,000 a year as a home health aide. Her rent just went from $1,200 to $1,800 because her building was sold to a developer who's renovating it into luxury affordable housing. He paused, letting the irony sink in. Guess who that developer is? The studio was dead silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. MK Development bought Mrs. Rodriguez's building 6 months ago. They're gutting it, adding granite countertops, and calling the new units workforce housing, at $2,400 per month. Mrs. Rodriguez got evicted last week. Her kids are staying with relatives while she sleeps in her car. Moskowitz tried to respond, but no sound came out. Your bill, Mamdani continued, would give MK Development a $2.3 million tax credit for displacing Mrs. Rodriguez. They get paid to gentrify. You get campaign contributions. She gets homeless. That's your housing solution. Hayes was staring at his notes, probably wondering if the network's lawyers were watching. Moskowitz finally found his voice. This is an unconscionable attack. It's an attack on corruption, Mamdani said. Here's the part that really stings. You know about Mrs. Rodriguez. My office sent yours a letter 3 weeks ago, detailing her case. Your staff called it one isolated incident, and said you'd look into it. He pulled out another paper. This is your scheduler's email to MK Development. The same day, quote, Congressman Moskowitz is available for the strategy meeting Thursday at 3 p.m. Please use the K Street entrance. End quote. The congressman from Florida was sweating now, visible beads forming on his forehead. That was a routine meeting about how to structure the bill language to maximize Klein's profits, while minimizing public scrutiny. Mamdani said, Should I read the meeting notes? Or do you want to tell America what you discussed? I don't have to sit here and listen to conspiracy theories. These aren't theories, they're phone records. Mamdani's voice hardened. Klein called your office 17 times between March and August. Your bill was amended 12 times in the same period. Every amendment made it easier for his company to qualify for federal money. He leaned forward. The final version removes income verification, eliminates local oversight, and creates a loophole so big that luxury developers can drive yachts through it. Whose idea was that? Jared? Moskowitz stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. This ambush ends now. I came here for a policy discussion, not character assassination. Sit down, Mamdani said quietly. The authority in his voice made Moskowitz freeze. You came here to defend a corrupt bill that steals money from poor families to enrich your donors. The least you can do is explain why. The congressman slowly sat back down, his hands visibly shaking. Representative Mamdani, Hayes interjected. These are serious allegations. They're documented facts. Mamdani said. Klein's company has received $47 million in federal housing money over 3 years. They've built 0 affordable units. Instead, they've demolished 4 affordable housing complexes and replaced them with luxury developments. The math is simple. 2,400 affordable units destroyed, 0 affordable units created, $47 million in profit. He turned to Moskowitz. Your bill makes this legal nationwide. Every city, every state. Developers get rich, families get homeless, congressmen get campaign cash. That's not housing policy. That's organized theft. Moskowitz tried one more time. You're misrepresenting the complexity of housing development. These partnerships create economic opportunities. For who? Mamdani's voice rose for the first time. Mrs. Rodriguez is sleeping in her car. Her 7-year-old daughter asked me why the rich man needed their apartment more than they did. What should I tell her? That Congressman Moskowitz needed campaign money more than she needed a home. The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. Finally, Moskowitz spoke, his voice barely audible. That's not how it works. That's exactly how it works, Mamdani said. And here's how I know. Klein's firm wasn't the only donor involved. Meridian Housing Partners, $23,400. Atlantic Development Group, $27,400. Sunshine Coast Builders, $19,800. All luxury developers. All received federal affordable housing money, none built affordable housing. He pulled out a final document. Combined, they've displaced 8,700 families in Florida alone. They've donated $312,000 to your campaigns over 4 years. They've received $107 million in federal housing funds. That's a 40,700% return on investment. Not bad for a housing bill. Moskowitz's face had gone completely white. His aide was frantically gesturing to the cameras, making cutting motions. Congressman, Hayes said gently, would you like to respond to? That's when it happened. At exactly 8:03 p.m., 43 seconds after Mamdani finished reading Klein's donation total, the studio lights went dark, the cameras stopped recording. The red on-air sign blinked off. We're experiencing technical difficulties, a producer announced. Stand by. But Mamdani knew better. In the sudden darkness, he heard Moskowitz whisper to his aide, did you call them? The response was barely audible. Klein's lawyer is on the phone with the network president. When the lights came back on 3 minutes later, Hayes was alone at the desk. We apologize for the technical interruption, he said, reading from a hastily scribbled note. Congressman Moskowitz had to leave for an urgent family matter. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow with housing policy expert Dr. Susan Williams. But there would be no tomorrow discussion. By 9 p.m., Moskowitz had issued a statement calling Mamdani's allegations reckless and defamatory. By 10 p.m., Klein's lawyers had sent cease and desist letters to 3 news outlets that had covered the debate. By midnight, MSNBC had quietly removed the debate footage from their website. They claimed audio-technical issues made it unsuitable for broadcast. The next morning, Mamdani held a press conference in front of Mrs. Rodriguez's former apartment building. Behind him, a sign read Future Home of MK Luxury Residences, starting at $2,400 a month. He read Klein's donation records aloud to a crowd of displaced tenants and housing advocates. The footage went viral on social media, reaching 12 million views in 48 hours. 3 days later, the FBI opened an investigation into Klein's company and their federal contracts. 2 weeks after that, Moskowitz quietly withdrew his Housing Stability Act, citing the need for further stakeholder input. Mrs. Rodriguez never got her apartment back, but she did find a new one in Mamdani's district, where rent stabilization laws had kept prices affordable. Her daughter asked fewer questions about rich men taking homes. On November 5, 2024, 3 weeks after the debate that America never saw, Moskowitz lost his re-election bid by 12 points. Exit polls showed that 67% of voters cited housing issues as their primary concern. Klein's company filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months later, After the FBI investigation revealed $23 million in fraudulent billing, the federal funds were recovered and redirected to actual affordable housing construction. Mamdani kept the manila folder from that night on his desk. Inside were 200 more pages, documenting housing corruption across 12 states. But the story didn't end there. 3 months after the cameras went dark, Mamdani received an encrypted email from someone calling themselves Housing Truth. The message contained bank routing numbers, wire transfer receipts, and audio recordings that made Klein's operation look like a corner lemonade stand. The sender had been inside Klein's operation from the beginning. Sarah Chen, former MK Development Controller, had been documenting everything since 2021. She'd watched her boss steal millions while families slept in cars. She'd seen Moskowitz's staff draft bill language in Klein's conference room. She'd recorded phone calls where they laughed about housing the homeless in luxury. Chen's evidence revealed a network spanning 17 states and 43 congressional districts. The housing corruption wasn't isolated to Florida. It was systematic, coordinated, and worth $47 million in misappropriated federal funds. At exactly 2:17 p.m. on March 12, 2025, Chen walked into FBI headquarters in Manhattan, carrying 7 flash drives and a suitcase full of documents. Within 6 hours, federal agents were executing search warrants in 12 cities simultaneously. Klein was arrested while having lunch with 3 other congressmen at the Capitol Hill Club. The arrests made international headlines. American housing scam, larger than Enron, reported the London Financial Times. Congressional corruption reaches nearly $1 billion, announced Der Spiegel. For the first time since Watergate, housing policy became front-page news worldwide. Moskowitz wasn't the only casualty. Representatives from Texas, Arizona, and Nevada all resigned within 2 weeks. The Housing Stability Act became toxic. No politician wanted their name associated with it. Progressive Democrats led by Mamdani introduced the Rodriguez Housing Rights Act, named after the woman who'd slept in her car while congressmen counted Klein's money. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came on April 3, 2025, when Mamdani stood before a packed House chamber to deliver his housing corruption report. As he read the names of displaced families and the amounts stolen from them, Republican and Democratic members sat in stunned silence. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Mamdani said, looking directly at the camera, "wanted me to tell Congress something. Her daughter doesn't ask about rich men taking homes anymore. She asks when politicians will stop helping them do it." The chamber erupted in applause that lasted 97 seconds, the longest ovation in House history for a corruption report. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a subpoena or a press conference. It's truth, documented and revealed at exactly the right moment. Because when cameras cut off, America pays attention to what they didn't want you to see.